2. There we go. Let's get this show on the road. Welcome and hello. And the question on Instagram is, do I teach? I do. I teach iridology to health professionals. And so, yeah, you'll get a little information about that as we go here today. So stay tuned with me. And I look forward to having a conversation with you about that. Let's get going. You ready to see this? You ready to learn about how your irides change when we are talking about breaks and surgeries and other kinds of traumas to the body? There are a lot of misconceptions about iridology that are being perpetrated by people who've been trained in archaic and disproven, oops, and I'll even turn my camera on here. Hello. And disproven methodologies that give us all a bad name. Now that might sound like a harsh judgment, but it is absolutely true. Iridologists who are up to date practice constitutional iridology where research is still being done and where iridology is a developing science. So let's chat. If you've got questions about the topic at hand, please type them into the chat box or the comments box, regardless of which app you are with me on. And if you're with me on Facebook, I would love it if you would say hello, because otherwise I don't know that you're there. And I would just love to know that you are with me. So let's start at the very beginning as to why so many of these myths continue. The story goes that Ignaz von Petschle, an 11-year-old boy, caught an owl, or an owl landed on him, or somehow he got a hold of this owl. And somehow in the process the owl was injured, whether it was injured before Ignaz found him or got injured in the capturing process. And he broke a leg or a wing, we're not sure exactly which. And so there's so many different versions of this story that it's hard to know which one to exactly believe. But it does say that as an 11-year-old boy, what he noticed was a dark line in the owl's iris, and that as he took this owl home and nursed it back to health, this dark line disappeared. Now, here's the big question I have about this. Don't you think that if that happens in birds, that with all of the bird rescue sanctuaries there are out there where injured birds are taken to be fixed, to be healed, don't you think someone would have noticed this and would have reported a correlation? Well, it hasn't been reported by anybody else. And so what we know is that that may or may not be an actual thing. It might have been a little boy's imagination. We don't know. We don't know. And even his extended family started to question him. So I wanted to see if anything like that would happen in humans. Now, I didn't actually plan to do this experiment. It just happened. This is my eye. This is specifically my left eye, taken on the 17th of March, 2017. Now, what we know is that the iris itself is genetic. This is everything my parents have passed down to me. Thanks, Mom and Dad. And the sclera is dynamic. This is what I've done to myself or am doing to myself right now. So March 2017, I want you to look right at this area. On most iridology charts, this is the arm area. Okay, so I'm going to show you some interesting things that come after this. Note the date, March 17th. Note this is the arm area. Get a good look at what this looks like for these fibers, the way these are laying. And, you know, I mean, the way these fibers are does suggest a predisposition to, you know, maybe a tendency towards inflammation, which is something I've never experienced in my left arm. Well, on March 13th, 2019, I slipped on some ice. Yes, I live in a place where we call it the cold north, true and free. Well, it's not free anymore, but the cold north, true. And so, oh, that was a political statement. I slipped on some ice, and unbeknownst to me at this point in time, I knew I'd broken something, but I didn't realize that what I'd done is broken 2 bones in my wrist that would not be able to be set without surgery. This is not how my wrist normally looks. It normally doesn't have this great big bump in it. And so later that day, this is me waiting in the hospital in the emergency room. This is what the x-rays look like. You can see one of the breaks very clearly here. So they did try to do a closed reduction. It did not work. They were not They were not successful. Fortunately, they knocked me out for that, because that's, my husband watched it. He said it was a pretty nasty thing to watch. And so, I said there was a couple of nurses holding my shoulders down, a couple of residents pulling on my arm and massaging my wrist to try to get things to go into line, and they just wouldn't. So I ended up in a temporary cast for a few hours until they could get me into surgery. Somewhere in here, I believe it's up in here, there's another break, but I'm not sure. I don't know how to read x-rays. I just know that there are 2 breaks in here. This is me with my surgical cast on, right? My fat little sausage fingers after the open reduction and a double internal stabilization. I'll show you what that looks like in a minute. And I mean, my fingers were so swollen, I could not move them. I was barely able to eat anything. If you've ever had a general anesthetic, you know what I mean? Like, it was like 3 days for that to work its way out of my system before I could actually eat anything. So I was nursing down a bit of yogurt or a bit of whatever I could think of that would not come back up. On March 19th, again, this is what my eye looks like. Okay, get a life, girl, right? March 17th, March 14th, I'm in surgery. March 17th, I'm just, coming to my senses. And on March 19th, it's like, okay, I'm going to take pictures of my eyeball. Now, what I want to point out here is one of the things that I'm really critical of with people who do photos is they change the settings on their camera. And we know that for various things, if we change the settings on the camera, it nullifies the study, right? So there we are, March 13th, again, March 14th after the surgery. Notice I did change my my camera settings here a little bit. When you're sort of semi-high on medical drugs, you maybe don't think as well as you should. And so slightly different settings here, but I did want to see what happened here. Now I want you to see, this is just days after the surgery. The bone has not healed. The bones are now held in place. I'll show you in a moment with metal plates and screws. But look there's no change in the fiber structure. We still have the same thick fibers, the same little gap between, the same thick fiber over here. It is the same. If this was like the owl story, there should have been a black line come through here that should have slowly receded as the healing happened. Okay, so here we are, like I said, on the 19th, and we've got now implants in the wrist, semi-bionic wrist. I've tested this at the airport back then. This is before all the lockdowns, and I did not set off any metal detectors. So that was good. All right. So note the date here. We're 29th of March, 2019, 2 weeks post-surgery. This was the day they changed my cast. They do a whole new set of x-rays to make sure everything is the way it should be when they take off the surgical cast to put on the regular plaster cast. All right, 2019 was not a good year. Here's another angle, 12 screws, 2 plates, there we go. My wrist is now indestructible where that metal plate is, or so they say. Here's what the incisions looks like with all the dried blood. You can see the scar right here for one of the incisions. And here's the scar on the side of my arm for the other incision. They had to do 2 incisions to get these plates into the right place. It was a double surgery. Okay, March 29th. April 3rd, again, just tracking. Are we seeing any changes here? No, we are not. This is exactly the same. Now, if it looks like things have shifted position a little bit, like the eye has rotated a bit, my camera is handheld, which means that, yeah, I could have not been holding my camera totally level. And that's just a part of being human, right? So let's look at these 3 images side by side. March 17, 2017, 2 years pre-injury. We come up to March 19th, few days post-surgery, 2 broken bones and double surgery, 2 metal plates, and there's nothing showing here that is different from the first one. And a couple weeks later, when we changed the cast, again, there's nothing showing here. Okay, so are we all good so far that this eye did not change? 2 broken bones, 2 metal plates, a double surgery. It was the doctor said it was a 3-hour surgery to get in there, to get into both incisions, get the bone lined up, get the plates in, get things sutured up again. All right, then, like I said, 2019 was not a good year. On Mother's Day, no less, visiting my son, no less. I tripped on his stairs and I fell down the stairs and I landed on my left arm on my elbow. And I can assure you, your elbow is not supposed to have a gap in it like this. All right, so here we've got this gap. This is the olecranon, for those of you who know your anatomy, snapped right off, right? So this is like 9-10 weeks after the first break. Yeah. You will be happy to know that with my young grandchildren standing there panicking over poor grandma, I did not say any words that I should not have said. All I said was, oh, 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 repeatedly. And it was just, oh my goodness. And so here I am a little bit later in the ER with my elbow looking not like it's supposed to look. And, you know, I teased the nurses there and said, don't you think I should get frequent flyer points? You ought to give me some kind of a discount or fast track me up the line or something, because I've been here so often lately. At any rate, so another surgery. The only way to repair an olecranon is with surgery and with wires and pins. And so I now have another surgical cast. I discovered that scrub tops are ideal for this, very comfortable, but they've got a wide enough sleeve that you can get a cast through it without, you know, doing gymnastics. So that was very cool. And they've got lots of pockets on them for it to carry things. When you've only got one hand, you need pockets, right? And so if you ever break your arm, scrub tops, that's your answer. So here we are, May 27th, not quite as on the ball, but we've seen my eye photos from 2 weeks after the first surgery, right? So we know what it looked like. And look at this, same arm, another break, and it looks exactly the same. We do not have that black line like what Ignaz van Peschle said he saw in the bird's eye. All right, now you'd think that if you did this much damage to a body part, that the eyes would register something, but they won't, because the iris is genetic. The break didn't change my genes. If I had conceived a child within moments after breaking my arm, my child would not have inherited a broken arm. So the break did not change my genes, so it's not going to show up in the iris. And equally so, having metal plates in my wrist, having wires and pins and pulleys in my arm didn't change my genetic structure. And since it's not going to change my genetic structure, it's not going to change my iris. Right? And you can see how they've got hooks and pins and things to pull this all together. I can actually feel this in my elbow when I dig around in it. I can feel this little protrusion of this little metal pin. It's really kind of disgusting, actually. I don't do that very often, seriously. So a few months later in September, I'm looking to see, has anything changed? Again, camera settings are slightly different, which accounts for the brightness of the photo. I totally admit that. We're not looking for color change in the eye. We're looking for fiber structure change in this case, and there's nothing. So my conclusion from this is that breaks and surgeries and traumas do not reflexively show up in the iris, because breaks and surgeries and traumas do not change genetic structure. Now, my arm is totally healed up, as close to good as it can be, which is very good. I have an excellent physiotherapist, and after the first break, he said, well, this is serious because it's 2 bones. After the second break, he came in to the appointment laughing, going, really? Really? What, breaking 2 bones wasn't enough? You had to break another one in the same arm? But he also said that most people who break their olecranon, and even most people who break their wrist, don't regain full mobility again or full strength. He was brutal. I did all the exercises he said. I let him inflict so much pain, and I've got full use back. And it's just because we endured the pain. So I got to tell you, I am thankful for medical doctors who did such a good job, and for my all-star physiotherapist, and for all the knowledge I have of natural healing. Now that I've introduced you to my arm, I'd like to introduce you to me. Would that be okay if I introduced myself now that you know all about my arm? And we've got Mary Nana Grandma with us on Facebook. Thanks for being there. And those of you who are with us on Facebook, let us know that you're there, okay? I love seeing everybody here. So my name is Judith Cobb. I am a master herbalist, natural nutrition clinical practitioner, and a certified level 3 iridology instructor. These are my badges from IPA, which says I'm a level, did I change? Oh, I didn't update these. Oh my goodness, these are my old badges. These are my level 1, 2 badges, but I am now level 3 as of just a few months ago. And so I will have to update that. I got into holistic healing years ago because I had health problems and the medical world seemed unable to come up with answers. And that was like over 40 years ago. And so as I got into holistic healing, I realized this was going to be my passion and my first love for a career. Over the years, I've written many books and self-published them as well. They're all out of print right now. Pregnancy Naturally, the Herbal Birth Kit Handbook, Healthy Kids Naturally, The Essential Guide to Nature's Sunshine Products, Biokinesiology and Color Therapy Level 1 and 2, Confident Nutritionist Dynamic Iridology Textbook, which is the book we use in the Dynamic Iridology course. I've also created and taught many different courses. Oh, and we've got Fitz and Sherry joining us in Facebook. Thank you for being there. The courses that I've designed and taught like nearly 40 years ago, Herbology Level 1, which was 20 hours of practical use for herbs that you could buy already prepared in the health food store. And the students who did that one loved it so much that they asked for more. So we created a Level 2, which was how to understand the ingredients in a herbal blend that you would buy already made in health food stores. So we did singles and we did combinations. Also designed and taught Biokinesiology and Color Therapy Level 1 and 2. For a while in there, I was also a certified prenatal educator with the ICEA, International Childbirth Education Association. So that was a lot of fun to design and teach antenatal or prenatal classes. And I've been teaching iridology for many, many years. But just 5 or 6 years ago, I decided to get involved with IPA and to become a certified instructor with them. So if you'll stay with me till the end, I have an invitation for you to do with the next start date of the actual course itself. But I have a little more information for you. Again, just a proud professional member of the Canadian Association of Holistic Nutrition Professionals and of the Canadian Association of Natural Nutritional Practitioners, also a proud professional member of the Alberta Herbalist Association. Let's look at some more eyes. That work for you? Hello, Maria. Good to see you in the Facebook or in the webinar. Good to see you. And again, I would love it if the rest of you would say hello on the webinar too, and on Instagram. Let me know you're there. It's great to have you with me. One of the other markings that shows up in the sclera right over here in this particular case is called a trauma fork. This was a young client of mine. She was about 17 when she came to me with this. I'd worked with her for many years. I worked with her parents before she was born, and I've been a part of her life for all these years. Her mom brought her to me when she was in her grade 12 year, second semester, and what had happened is a fellow at school had decided it would be funny to hit this young lady over the head with a very heavy book. So he bonked her on the front corner of her forehead very hard, gave her a third-degree concussion, nearly cost her the semester at school. I don't have photos of her eyes from before this incident. I can only assume that she did not have this marking because the sclera is very, very dynamic. It changes in response to stress. And so what we've got here, classic trauma fork that shows if we come straight in and look at an iris map, whatever is straight in here is the area of greatest impact, and however wide the arms of the trauma fork reach tells us the scope of the impact. It took her many months to recover. She had to have a proctor and a reader for her exams at school because if she read the words, they didn't stick. She did overcome that. She did heal up beautifully, has gone on to post-secondary and graduated from that and is doing very, very well. But this is, again, in the sclera, we would expect this to come up after the trauma, like very soon after the trauma. And again, she now lives 2,000 miles away. And so I am not able to get follow-up pictures of her. One of these times when if she ever comes back to Calgary for a visit, I hope to see her to get new photos. Here's another example of a trauma fork right here. Again, suggesting that there was some kind of a significant physical impact probably to the head. This client is very physically active, so that's very possible. Again, I haven't seen her since we did these photos, so we don't know if that has reduced. And I didn't see her before the injury. And so with as pale as this one is, as thin as these blood vessels are, I assume this is an old injury that has healed as far as it's going to. This is an abdominal surgery, a hernia repair. So this is a young man. He is in his early 20s, and he had had a really serious hernia that was going to cost him his job. Like they had put him on reduced duties, and there's only so long that a company will carry you that way. And so, and if he'd waited for surgery to get surgery here in Calgary, it would have been probably an 18-month wait. We were able to find a doctor in a small town about 2 hours away who could take him within weeks. So we got him in for his surgery. And this is before the surgery. And look very closely, everything down here, everything over here, and look over here. Now, what I want you to notice first, pupils are a different size. We used a different lighting setup on the camera, right? And these would have been done before, like probably years before. Okay, this is actually one of my sons, probably years before. New lighting, same camera, new lighting setup, which accounts for the different size in the pupil, at least in part. Certainly we could have a nervous system, something happening that enlarged the pupil as well. But when we look in these abdominal areas, we don't see a black line. This was literally just a few days after the surgery, right? And so we would have expected to see a black line if we were following Ignaz's story. There is no black line, none whatsoever. And that hernia, he'd had it for several months before it got bad enough that he said, Mom, they can't even get me in for surgery for a year and a half. And I went, leave it to me. And I did some research and found the doctor and got him a referral over to that doctor, or rather told him to ask his doctor here to get a referral to this other doctor. And we got the ball rolling. This is another fellow, 2017, 3 years prior to a bowel cancer diagnosis. What we see is a little bit of what I call splatter pigment down here. I don't know if you can see that on Instagram. Very fine, black, dotty bit. 2018, 2 years prior to the bowel cancer. And it was colon cancer. And so noting which eye this is, it was not quite rectal. It was slightly up from the rectum. So this is perfectly placed pigment for the rectum. 6 weeks post-surgery, because what happened is he was diagnosed. Let me just flip back one image. Back to here. He was diagnosed with bowel cancer September of 2020, sorry, 2020. Got to do the math in my head. And so 6 weeks post-surgery, after having had about a 12-inch section of his bowel removed, no ostomy, thank goodness, but they've removed a portion of his rectum and a good chunk of his descending colon. There's nothing here, like a black line. So we've got camera. This is one set of the camera with one type of lighting on it. And this is the same camera, but I changed out the lighting to make sure that we had photos that would at least match what we had done previously. This is the same lighting as we've used on previous images. This is the lighting we used. This is my preferred lighting now. But again, we see nothing in here that says surgery, right? Genetically, his genes still say if he had the bowel piece, he would be a little bit prone to something going wrong. We've got that bit of a splatter pigment in there. So is the cancer seen because it's genetic? So Emma, we're not seeing cancer. This is a really important distinction. We're seeing pigment that shows us an increased risk of something. And we don't always know what that something is until we ask the questions. What were the black dots? They are simply pigment. They're simply pigment. Okay. And so when we see pigment in the eye or a marking, it's never a guarantee of anything. If I know this fellow well, it's actually my oldest son, and I know a lot about his emotion, and I suspect this has to do an awful lot with emotion, that we could ask the emotional questions and we would find justification for this pigment just as much as we found, just as much as there was the cancer found there. Which suggests to me that his cancer had an emotional base as much as anything, because there is no bowel cancer anywhere else in the family. Okay, so I hope that helped Emma. Emma is currently in my class, and on the current dynamic iridology course, and I'm just very excited that she's here. And we've got a few other students with us today as well, so that's very cool, and some graduates even. Cool. So the fact that we don't see changes in the iris that are a result of surgery or trauma is because the iris is genetic, it's inherent. So with that, I'd like to take a moment to introduce you to the course, The Confident Nutritionist Dynamic Iridology. And for those of you on Instagram, forgive me for the wobbly screen. I'm just going to put my camera back on the stand. This is the only live, online, fully mentored course for nutritionists, herbalists, and naturopaths. We can add chiropractors, registered nurses, medical doctors into that as well, who want to streamline their clinical work without sacrificing client care, so they can stop working unpaid overtime to develop client programs, so they can stop overwhelming their clients with programs that are just not doable, so that they can create programs that will help their clients to be able to stick to the programs, increase client compliance and client success, and long-term retention. If you want to learn more than just iris markers, if you want to learn how the iris markers play off each other, if you want to be mentored in creating programs for your clients, and if you want long-term support for your iridology practice and mentoring after the course is done, I invite you to stick with me, because the goal of dynamic iridology is specifically to teach you constitutional iridology and how to use it confidently, so that you can easily integrate what you already know about nutrition or herbology or medicine to confidently create doable client programs in your paid client sessions when you are with your clients. That is so important. My belief is that if you have to go and spend 2 or 3 or 4 hours to create the program, you're putting too much homework into it for your client, and your client will not be able to manage it. That's been my experience. And so really important that we acknowledge that. Now, I love that Emma was asked questions about those photos. Does anyone else have any questions while we move forward with this? Oops, that's not exactly where I wanted to be. There we go. So the next round of dynamic iridology starts on April 21st. The class times will be 5 to 7 p.m. Mountain Time. Early registration is open. If you are a holistic health, or sorry, not even holistic, if you're a health professional, if you're a massage therapist, a chiropractor, a medical doctor, a registered nurse, a herbalist, a nutrition coach, any of those, and you want to talk about how to add iridology to your practice, you want to talk about what's involved in the course, you want more details, book a call. Schedule a time to call me. This is not a sales call. This is a call to find out where you're at, what your goals are, and how can I help you? And if this course is the right thing for you to do, I will offer you the opportunity to enroll. If it's not, then I'll give you different information. I'll give you suggestions of other things that maybe need to happen before you come into iridology. So that URL is tinyurl.com/insight-call. This is Natalie Laureate. She is a naturopath from France, and she has attended and successfully completed the dynamic iridology program. And what she said, that's her holding her certificate. Isn't she a lovely lady? Just, oh, loved teaching her. I'm so happy. My first English certification. English is not her first language. Thanks. It was so a pleasure to have you as a teacher. Thank you. It was so a pleasure to follow the program every week. You are a great teacher. Have a nice day, Judith. Love that. Love that she was able to be very successful in the course. While learning English, we were able to help her, to support her getting the knowledge that she wanted and the training that she wanted. I absolutely adore my students. This is Joyce Lee. She's a clinical aromatherapist, chartered herbalist, and a certified nutrition coach. She says, I took an iridology course from another school years ago, but I was left feeling inadequately trained and with no confidence in the material or my abilities to perform accurate assessments. Upon completion of Judith's course, I feel very confident in my abilities and excited to offer iridology services to my clients. This course is an incredible value, highly recommended. Love that. I love that my students love the course. So again, our next course start date is April 21st. Registration is open now. I only take 10 students per class. And so if you are interested in learning more about the course, about all the details of how many hours of training you'll get, how many weeks of classes we have, what other support do I offer in the scope of the class and to my students? You know, if you're that health professional and you want to add iridology and you need all that information, which you do, of course, to make a good decision as to whether this is the right course for you, I invite you to book a call with me. Let's have a conversation and let's see if it's a good fit. Alrighty, so I'm not seeing any other questions come in about the broken bones and the trauma and the surgeries. And so Jenny says she's very interested in starting in April. Jenny, take that URL. Let's book a call. Okay, let's book a call. Let's have a chat and let's make sure this is the right fit for you. I really insist on talking with my prospective students before they enroll. I find that when students come in who don't have a good base in anatomy and physiology, they drop out. And that makes me sad. That means they're not successful. And I want them to be successful. So I need to chat with you. So Jenny, please take that URL, schedule a call. Let's have a conversation. Let's make sure this is a good fit for you. All righty. Well, that's all I have for you today, folks. Thank you so much for being with me today. I appreciated the questions that Emma asked and the comments that Jenny made. So good to have you with me. I love the interaction, and I look forward to hopefully speaking with many of you very soon. Have a marvelous day. We'll talk to you soon. Bye for now.